What's going on, everybody? Teach back again for today's conclusion to our updated 2023 NFL mock draft. This is the first 3-round mock I have up on the channel, so excited to bring you the first time that we talked about round 3. We have a ton of picks to get through, so I won't drone on too long here at the top of the video, but same question I had in yesterday's video. If you've been following the Senior Bowl, I'd love to hear who you think the biggest winners down in Mobile were, who made the most money, who solidified their position maybe on day 2, or who maybe even moved out of the day 2 conversation into day 1 in your eyes. Love to hear your thoughts, and of course, just like in the other videos, who's your favorite team? And what do you think about the picks as we move along? But again, a lot of picks to talk about. I'll probably be a little bit more to the point with all these selections. We start with the Chicago Bears, and I think Luke Wypler is the exact center this offense needs. I mean, a 300-pound center, so he's a little light, but because of that, very fleet of foot, and if Luke Getsy is going to continue in this zone blocking scheme, this is the center to have leading the way there. And you look at the impact like a Tyler Linderbaum had last year for the Ravens. I think Wypler could do the exact same thing for the Bears here, get you an upgrade there on the interior offensive line, make the life of Khalil Herbert that much easier, which on that note, if you are a dynasty owner, get your hands on Khalil Herbert. I think he's in for a monster year. I think they let David Montgomery walk. That zone blocking scheme is tailor-made for Herbert, and especially if they drafted a Wypler here to start round 3, that dude's going to put out some gaudy numbers. Next up, Houston Texans. Let's go with Jalin Hyatt here. Easily a guy who can go on day 2, but you're looking at a draft now that we've gone edge, corner, and then we started it all off with quarterback, that is, and then now we're adding a wide receiver. Hyatt, I think, even though he's a little small, can play on the outside. He largely did that for Tennessee. So, yeah, you have John Mechie III coming back. He's primarily going to be your slot wide receiver. So, I think Jalin Hyatt basically just assumes the Brandon Cooks role. Now, obviously, a change in the coaching staff, and that means the offensive coordinator position is going to be different. But, ideally, what Brandon Cooks was asked to do last year, you can ask Jalin Hyatt to do the same thing. A little bit more of a limited route tree than I think what Cooks has, but, a guy who's been playing, 8 years in the NFL versus a rookie. Obviously, that's a little bit kind of baked in there. Then we get to the Arizona Cardinals. We're going to actually go back to the interior offensive line. I know I hit Steve Avila here yesterday, and he did take some snaps at center at the Senior Bowl, but Jared Patterson also looked pretty good at the Senior Bowl. So I'm thinking in a world like this for Arizona, Patterson's your center, Avila is your upgrade at left guard. So you have a replacement for Pugh at left guard and Rodney Hudson there at center. And this is a team that's been looking for interior offensive line upgrades and just hasn't found them. So I don't mind them doubling up here. And, this is a team in a rebuild, and the trenches are a great place to begin. I like to begin on the outside, draft corners, wide receivers, but those nice shiny objects only get you so far if you don't have a pass rush that can get home or an offensive line that can allow a wide receiver to get down the field. So I do think it is an important area for Arizona to address. Next up, Denver Broncos. Let's go with, they actually have 2 picks here. So we're going to start with Cody Mauch, and another guy who had a very interesting week down in Mobile. So a guy who, ideally, I've just been thinking about as a tackle, but I've been kind of thinking about, could you move him into guard? Because this guy has work to do as a pass protector. Obviously, he's new to playing offensive line in and of itself. So the pass protection is still a work in progress, but high-end athlete, and this dude flies all over the field as a run blocker. So especially as a pulling guard, it's like, dude, that guy could be scary. So for Denver, I'm thinking this is a world where he could play guard and then maybe move to tackle. Maybe you could have him stick out at right tackle right away. But with Dalton Reisner as a free agent, unfortunately, he even took some, Cody Mauch that is, even took some snaps at center. So if you're not feeling warm and fuzzy about Lloyd Cushenberry, there's a potential replacement. I think Quinn Miners is a guy who long-term can play on that interior offensive line, but Mauch could give you an upgrade and then maybe long-term becomes a tackle, or maybe he just plays right tackle right away. So you got some flexibility there with Mauch, and you get to take advantage of a high-end athlete and a really good run blocker. He would put a big smile on Javonte Williams' face. And then following it up at 68, let's go Tua Tagovailoa. A little bit of a tweener. I know Mel Kiper Jr., his mock had him listed as a defensive tackle. He is that. He's 6'4", 290, so he's this 3-4 DN to outside edge rusher. And for Denver, with Draymond Jones becoming a free agent, it feels like he could play that 3-4 DN role. And then depending on the situation, maybe kick inside a little bit more. Like if you're playing dime, it's a passing situation. He could be that defensive tackle over a guard, pass rushing from there. I think he can handle that. And then obviously you already have Randy Gregory, Brandon Browning, who I think only getting better as a pass rusher. Nick Benito, and then if they bring back Jacob Martin, he can be in the fold as well there on the edge. So Tagovailoa, I'm thinking more of that interior pass rush help that the Broncos may need. But we'll see what they end up doing with Draymond Jones. Next, we get to the Rams. As promised in yesterday's video, we're going to go interior offensive line. Andrew Voorhees, a guy who played a ton at USC. This is a plug-and-play upgrade there at left guard. So not a whole lot to talk about here. The Rams need to get better on the offensive line. I think Voorhees gives them that immediate upgrade. And again, a guy who played a ton of college football, so I think you can trust him on day one. Raiders at pick 70. Let's go with Mazi Smith here. I have been for years trying to get the Raiders to take this big, massive body there on the defensive line. A couple years ago, it was Christian Barmore. Then it was Jordan Davis for points of last draft season. I've had Brian Brzee at points of this draft season. But here, let's go Mazi Smith. Get him a little bit later. High-end athlete, 6'3", 335, 340 pounds. Bit inconsistent, especially as a pass rusher, but you look at his, specifically his Pro Football Focus grades down the stretch at Michigan. Year over year, he got better as a run defender, and you even kind of saw that this past season for the Wolverines, where week over week, he kind of started to figure it out. So I feel like a guy who's just now piecing it together, and he's also Bruce Edelman's number one freaks list guy. So if you're on that list, that's impressive. If you're the number one guy on that list, you're going to go relatively high in the NFL draft. So didn't have a insane amount of production, but if I'm the Raiders, I'm looking at an insane athlete that, if works out, that type of dude in the middle of the defense stopping the run, sign me up. That's a project I'm willing to take on here at pick 70. Saints then at 71. As I said in round one, we're going to continue to address the defensive line. This is a team that just likes to have a deep edge rotation, and Felix Anudike-Uzomah might not even be available at this point. So this could also just be best player available rationale, because I'm not entirely sure he makes it to 71. It's a deep edge class, though, so there's going to be people who fall. So you get Kalijah Cansey in the mix on the interior defensive line. Ideally, he's playing off of David Onyemata, who comes back. Onyemata's your run stopper. Cansey's your pass rush specialist from the inside. And then Anudike-Uzomah, especially considering a little bit smaller, 6'2", not great against the run. He can serve as the backup to a Peyton Turner who, if they don't bring back Marcus Davenport, I'm assuming here, Peyton Turner and Cam Jordan become the starters there on the edge, and then Anudike-Uzomah becomes that DPR. But if they bring back Davenport, that obviously changes a ton about what I'm going to do here in the third round, but we're also in the third round, so give me breaks. I am just kind of baking in Davenport's probably going to be gone, and Anudike-Uzomah gives you that third pass rusher that the Saints like to covet. So then we get to the Titans at 72. Let's go with Byron Young. This one is the Byron Young from Tennessee. Here he is. A team that's looking for edge help. Byron Young almost kind of makes me think of Danico Autry. Not that, their play styles are necessarily one-to-one, but Danico Autry to me was always this 3-4 D end, but then this past year, because of injuries, got kicked out to play edge. He was actually pretty good. And I think Byron Young can do a lot of the same things, and you get to keep him in state. That's kind of a fun fit. But I think this is a Tennessee team that's looking to get better on the edge, and we're getting close to the points in Harold Landry, or not really Harold Landry's contract. We're still probably a year or two's time away from that, but this offseason, you start to think about what Bud Dupree is to this team. Whether it's this offseason they move on from, or next year, I think they do actually have an opt-out of that contract. So whether it's this year or next, I think they do part ways with Bud Dupree. So going ahead and getting ahead of the curve by drafting Byron Young, I think makes a lot of sense for the Titans. Next up is Houston. We're going to go Gervon Dexter, another interior defensive lineman. A guy who brings a lot of talent and a lot of upside potential, because not many dudes that big that move like Gervon Dexter. Now look at this draft for Houston. We got a quarterback of the future. We got a wide receiver in the third round to pair up with them. We got an edge, defensive line, and corner. They need linebacker as well, so don't think that that's something I'm ignoring here. But interior defensive line, edge, and corner, man, that defense starts to look a whole lot more impressive. And man, if there's a guy to be able to tap in that potential, D'Amico Ryans might be it. He didn't play defensive tackle or anything like that, but he's worked with some damn good ones. And man, that guy just makes me feel like I could run through a brick wall. So let alone what Gervon Dexter could do. So let's move on to the Jets here at pick 74. I'm going to go back to a linebacker position here. Daiyan Henley, another guy who played really well at the Senior Bowl this past week. May not be a name that everybody knows, but ideal size, good athleticism, played well at the Senior Bowl. And I look at the Jets, we've added safety, we've added linebacker on day two. Safety yesterday in the second round video, today linebacker in the third round video. And to me, those are the only two holes left on that Jets defense. So, if they were to address that and Robinson and Henley hit, that defense is gross. It's legitimately unfair, especially when you consider it's Robert Saleh overseeing it all. So, man, that'd be a really, really scary defense and a really fun fit here for Henley to fall into. Next, the Atlanta Falcons. We went Brian Branch in the first round, but he's this nickel corner safety hybrid. So I'm going to go Jalen Jones here, a guy who has the making of being a high-level man press corner, 6'2", right around that 200-pound mark, like almost every other corner in this class. There's 6'1", 190, there's 6'2", 200. So you're probably getting tired of hearing me say that. But nonetheless, Jalen Jones got better year over year, actually only allowed 10 receptions in 10 games he played this year at A&M. So that in and of itself is pretty impressive. Now, granted, that A&M defense was just rough around the board, so that just might come as a cause of there was plenty of other things open, right? So Beyond that, though, like, who's that number 2 outside corner long term for Atlanta? I think it's worth taking the risk here in the 3rd round for Jalen Jones, because if it works out, him and AJ Terrell would be a disgusting tandem there on the outside. Both have good size. Plus Brian Branch that we took in the 1st round. Oh, all of a sudden, Atlanta, they don't look so bad in the secondary. And we've added Andre Carter. Heavy focus on the defense, but I mean, if you're a Falcons fan, I don't think you blame me. Next up, the New England Patriots at pick 76. Let's go with, I'm going to go DeJuan Jones here. This isn't necessarily my favorite pick I could have gone with, and anything, DeJuan Jones could go the next pick here to Miami. DeJuan Jones, though, man, if there's a world I can make it happen, I need him to be a Baltimore Raven. And I'm a Steelers fan, so I don't take joy in saying that, but he was just moving fools this week, the Senior Bowl. He's tossing around Isaiah Foskey, who's 6'4", 260, like he's a toy on the playground. What are we talking about? And not only Foskey, he was doing the same thing to 6'7", 260 Andre Carter. Like, that is no chump that he's just making it look easy against. So this guy, insane power profile, a mover of people, a little raw. I mean, not necessarily raw, a little rough as a pass protector, I guess is the better way to put it. So again, if I can have him go to Baltimore where you can't rush Lamar Jackson because of how explosive he is and how quickly he can break the pocket that is, you have to play contain against him. So for DeJuan Jones, it just kind of like, what we're seeing with Orlando Brown Jr., you don't have to be a great pass protector. Brown Jr., always felt like a good pass protector in Baltimore because nobody could rush truly against him. Now he's in Kansas City. We see, that's not really the strength of his game. DeJuan Jones, if he ends up at Baltimore, I know they have Morgan Moses for another 2 years, and he's only making $5 million a pop, which if you get anywhere near average play from an offensive tackle for $5 million a pop, that's an insane value. And Morgan Moses is playing above average football at this point in his career, which is also impressive. But nonetheless, man, DeJuan Jones for the Ravens. I mean, that's the fit where he is best suited, and it'd be an awesome addition long-term for that team. I know they also took Daniel Falele last year, so it may not be on the radars. Anyways, let's talk about the team that he actually did get drafted to. For New England, if there's another team, I know Dante Scarecchia is not there anymore as the offensive line coach, but they do have a great track record of developing these projects. And in this type of selection, you're keeping Trent Brown over at left tackle where he played last year. DeJuan Jones can step into a starting right tackle spot, assuming they do move on from Isaiah Wynn, which does feel inevitable. So there's a need. Solid value here in the middle of the 3rd round, and a mover of people at 6 foot, 360 plus pounds. I mean, God, DeJuan Jones. Not many people built like him, and I think Bill Belichick would be like, I want that dude playing right tackle for me. Again, I thought about that same fit here for Miami, but Jones now off the board. Let's go with Tucker Kraft here for the Miami Dolphins at 77. A smaller school guy, so you might not be familiar with him. And that is kind of my concern. I wonder, he was dominant at South Dakota State. Let's start with that. Guy was hooping, and he kind of was the offense for South Dakota State. But, then the question is, like, how much of that is just, like, dominating lower-level competition? So I'm interested to see what the athletic numbers come in at his pro day as well as the combine, because that might point, towards, like, he's got enough athletic ability to where he could do it at the NFL level too. But for Miami, it's like, solid enough blocker, high-level athlete, a better fit for what Mike McDaniels wants out of a tight end. Again, yesterday I thought about Luke Musgrave at pick 51, I think it was. But, here, Kraft is kind of one of those next best options here. You get him around later. Again, next week I plan on changing it up. It's going to be tight end in the 2nd round, then running back here in the 3rd. But this week I decided to do the inverse. I think Kraft would be a really interesting fit. They're in the middle of the 3rd round. This is a good tight end class too, so you're going to see a lot of tight ends coming off the board throughout days 1, 2. Then we get to Green Bay, and especially early day 3 as well. But anyways, now let's talk about the Green Bay Packers at 78. I'm going to go with Chris Smith here, a guy that I'm really high on. I'm a big Chris Smith guy. Played that free safety spot at Georgia and just did a really serviceable job. And I'm looking at, Green Bay team with Darnell Savage as a free agent this year. No, Adrian Amos is a free agent this year. Savage scheduled to be a free agent next year. If I have that backwards, I do apologize. But one is scheduled to be a free agent this year. One is scheduled to be a free agent next year. So you're looking at a team that's looking to potentially, for a replacement there as is, get a little bit cheaper, a little bit younger. It's also a team that drafts safety really well, which, take that for what you will. Also, NFL teams are utilizing 3 safety sets a ton. I think that big nickel formation is becoming more and more common. So even if you keep those guys around and add a Chris Smith into the mix, Darnell Savage just becomes this guy who rotates in and plays the box, that nickel corner role, or Adrian Amos doing that, who's a good coverage player in his own right. Man, that defense becomes that much harder to face. So we love this fit no matter how it ultimately plays out between Savage and Amos. Colts then at 79, we went future franchise quarterback for the Colts at 1, and now we're going to get him some help with Parker Washington. I just think he can get better than Paris Campbell, and Parker Washington may not be as fast or as quick as Paris Campbell, but does everything else better. Better route runner, more sure-handed, and also a guy who can go win at the catch point. I mean, he put some plays on tape at Penn State that are Jahan Dotson-esque, that may not have the size and the frame that make you think that dude can go win 50-50 balls, but he did. He did it with the Nittany Lions. So now you're looking at Bryce Young under center with obviously Jonathan Taylor in the backfield, what should be on paper a good offensive line, and a wide receiver room that has Michael Pittman as the one, Alec Pierce, who impressed me a ton, got way more out of him than I thought because I was not high on that pick as a second rounder last year, but he looked pretty good as a rookie, and then Parker Washington mans the slot. That offense looks like it could be scary, and that if Bryce Young hits the ground running, the Colts are right there and live in the mix for the AFC South. And by the way, I predicted them to win the division last year, so I would certainly like them to be able to bounce back and do just that. Anyways, Pittsburgh Steelers are next up at pick 80. We're going to go interior defensive line. Another small school guy, but another guy who played really well this past week at the Senior Bowl, Carl Brooks. He's, 6'3", 300 pounds. He played a lot of edge at Bowling Green, and he was their most productive pass rusher, so hey, if it works, it works. To me, he's a long-term potential like Cam Hayward replacement, that 3-4 DN spot. They also took Marvin Leal in the third round last year, so I might be doubling up with Brooks and Leal, but I do think they can get better there. This is not your nose tackle. This is not your Tyson Alualu replacement or Montravius Adams replacement, anything like that. I do think they could address that, but not necessarily one of those guys available. Maybe Keandre Coburn, but I at that point, let me wait till the fourth round to take a flyer on him. Byron Young, again, 3-4 DN. Mike Morris is more of an edge, maybe a guy who can kick inside. Jaquelin Roy, interesting, and he played pretty well at LSU. I could entertain it if they went Jaquelin Roy, but I'm going to go Carl Brooks, a guy who played really well at the Combine. Not a whole lot of people know his name, so I want to give him a shout here, a small school guy. Got to show him some love. Then we get to the Detroit Lions. I'm going to go to one of the two players for Illinois. Sidney Brown is what I'm trying to say, and his brother Chase Brown, also in this draft. Chase plays running back, Sidney plays safety, and so for the Lions, I was like, man, what else can I do? So hopefully, Lions fans, I'm obviously recording this before the second round video comes out. Hopefully, they have not screamed at me for taking the tight end yesterday, but we've gone edge, corner, linebacker, safety. We have addressed all four major food groups. But no, we've attacked the four major places where I think the Lions are looking for an upgrade, and I think Sidney Brown could be a nice, like, Chuck Elliott replacement long term. So I think that would be a really fun player to add in the mix. And also, Kirby Joseph, former Illinois safety. So you'd be pairing up Kirby Joseph and Sidney Brown. I think there was some overlap. There should be some overlap there. So two former Fighting Illini as your future safety tandem. Could make for a fun storyline. Anyways, that's not what we're here to do. We're not here to write headlines. But let's talk about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at pick 82. I'm going to go with a nickel corner guy. I think that could be in the mix. They have Jamel Dean and Sean Murphy-Bunting set to hit free agency. I think if you're only going to bring back one of those guys, it's Jamel Dean, but I'm also like lauding the Steelers to bring in Jamel Dean. So that's, I just think that perimeter corner is the higher value. So let's just say there's a world where Tampa does bring him back. You have Carlton Davis, Jamel Dean on the outside, let Murphy Bunting, who's been a little disappointing over the last handful of years, in the nickel role. And then you bring in Hodges Tomlinson, who a little small, 5'9", and very scrappy, 14 penalties this past year for TCU. But I don't know. Something about that screams like Todd Bowles is going to like this guy's energy. Being a barky player can be kind of tough because it's like, hey, take it easy, let's dial it down. Like Trevor Penning. It's just like, okay, dude, you're taking this to an extreme. But there's also like, dude, you know what? We play a physical game, go be physical. It's okay. So I'm interested to see how that maybe gets, changed, corrected, if you will, at the NFL level. But I kind of hope he keeps that little dog in him that he's got. So could be the slot corner of the future there for Tampa Bay. They could also play Antoine Winfield Jr. in that role. So maybe safety is this play they can go here. So let's go to pick 83, the Seattle Seahawks. We've already gone edge, interior defensive line, interior offensive line, wide receiver. And now here at 83, we're going to add a linebacker to pair up with Jordan Brooks. Marvin Overshone is he's a moldable ball of clay at that linebacker spot, but ideal size, 6'5", 245, high-end athlete. I think he's going to put up some good numbers at Indy. And I think after his pro day in Indy, when people start seeing, oh my God, 6'5", 245, and he moves like that, he's going to become a guy who's on everybody's day two radar. I just feel like I'm a little ahead of the curve there. We'll see. I mean, I could totally be wrong, but also the reason I validate him being here as a pick in the third round is only 5 missed tackles this year, and 4 came in one game. This is a guy who was, his first few years at Texas, had a huge problem not being able to bring down guys and missing a lot of tackles. That went away this year. He cleaned that up. So if that trend continues, plus that frame and athletic ability, this guy is a future starting NFL linebacker, and the Seahawks are looking for a guy that can pair with Brooks. So, hey, let's take the flyer here on pick 83 in the third round. So then we get to the Dolphins at 84. Let's go Jalen Duncan. I know he's definitely got guys in his corner. So Duncan here, ideally, really good athlete. I think that's the best thing he brings to the table, his athleticism and his footwork. Didn't take a huge step forward this year at Maryland. He was on my early offensive tackle honorable mentions list, but I didn't see enough from him to push it forward. So instead of being a first round type of guy, there's still people who think he should be. I have him here in the third round, and for the Dolphins, it's like you got a running back of the future. You've given the tight end that Mike McDaniels is looking for, and now you got Jalen Duncan to play that right tackle spot because Brandon Shell ain't it, Austin Jackson ain't it, and Walker Little certainly ain't it. So they went through 3 different guys in the position. None of them stick. So let's go Jalen Duncan, flip him over from left tackle with the Terps to play right tackle. I think he's a good enough athlete to be able to handle that, and a potential upgrade there for Miami. 3 picks all on the offensive side, but I mean, with an offense that's that good, when you just add those little cherries on top, it becomes really fun as like a mock drafter to be able to add those additions. So now let's talk about the Chargers up next. I made note of this yesterday. We're going to go ahead and attack tight ends. The last offensive position group I think they could get better at. Donald Parham's a free agent, and Gerald Everett can't do it forever. So we had the speed wide receiver, or the wide receiver with deep route running capabilities and some speed. Addison in round 1. Got that nose tackle, the run stuffer there in the middle, and Benton. And now you add Sam Laporta to be that tight end of the future, and I see next to no holes in that Chargers offense. Yeah, right tackle still is an issue, but I think they can fix that in free agency. So that's why I'm ignoring it here and going elsewhere. But off the tackle certainly could be in consideration here. Laporta, I know people are going to see Iowa tight end and be like, "Oh my God, George Kittle! Oh my God, T.J. Hawkinson! Like he's going to be a good blocker." No, not really. No, he's much more of the Noah Fant brand of Iowa tight end, where he can stand in front of a guy, but it's the athleticism and his pass catching ability that you're buying into. So could be a fun addition there for the Chargers. Kind of feels like a nice little Gerald Everett continuation in a lot of ways. Then we get to the Ravens next up at 86. I'm going to go with Mekhi Garner. Coming from LSU, you could argue DBU. I'll let you have that argument down below in the comment section. Is it Ohio State? Is it Alabama? Is it LSU? But ideal size, 6'2", 200 plus pounds. Again, how many times you can say this? And a guy who actually played really well at LSU might be overshadowed a little bit by the guys who came before him, Derek Stingley Jr. and even true freshman year from Eli Ricks. But a guy who played really, really well for Garner. So I think it's worth taking a flyer on him here in the third round. The Ravens also have a really good track record of just being this player development factory. So if there's a place to get the best out of someone with that size, it's Baltimore. So I'd love to see this fit. Marcus Peters is scheduled to be a free agent. Kyle Fuller as well. So looking for some help there on the perimeter as well. Then we get to the Vikings at 87. And, Zadarius Smith, that contract was kind of structured to be a one-year deal. Every year we're going through this Danielle Hunter. Does he want to be there? Does he not? So with that, I do think edge is going to be something that they're looking to attack. And also, old regime, right? Not the same guys in place with Zimmer and crew and Rick Spielman, who was the GM. But they have liked drafting edge on day 2, so I can see that trend continuing. Zach Harrison, though, is a little bit of a different edge. They like these speed bendy guys. Harrison, I think, is going to run in the 4.4s. I think he's got good straight line speed. He's 6'4", 260, 65 pounds. 270 maybe, honestly. But solid build, looks like an NFL caliber defensive end, and that's why so many people, that follow Ohio State or just follow the draft were like, hey, when's Zach Harrison going to take the step forward? But very inconsistent player, but for a team that needs edge, I think it's worth taking a shot here in the third round and seeing if you can turn that blend of straight line speed and that frame and strength profile into something a little bit more. May not be the most bendy player. I'm really interested to see what his 3-cone number turns into, because that could propel his stock quite a bit. Next is the Jacksonville Jaguars. Let's go add Cedric Tillman. 6'3", 210, 215-pound wide receiver. Just feels like a guy that they're missing. Yeah, I know Marvin Jones has some decent size. And yeah, I'd say Jones is, decently built, but 6'3", I don't think those guys are that big. So let's go add a little bit more beef. And also, I think a guy who, if all works out, is better than Zay Jones and Marvin Jones, at least at this point in their career. Marvin Jones had some years, so I don't want to knock against the dude. But add that 6'3" receiver type. And if all works out, you're talking about him and Calvin Ridley, very different, skill sets. Tillman to work the sideline and the intermediate parts of the field, not necessarily a burner, but can do those big body contested catch, possession receiver type of things. Calvin really becomes this speedy, deep route running guy who works, 15 plus yards down the field. That's his specialty, intermediate and beyond. And then Christian Kirk, who proved to be a great slot weapon last year and worth the money they gave him. Guy who has long speed, can be a deep weapon, but also a great satellite player who can work underneath. Him and Lawrence already have a great chemistry. This is the type of wide receiver I'd love to see the Jags add. Feels like it rounds out that wide receiver room while you still have Marvin Jones and Zay Jones there then as depth. So would love to see this add for Jacksonville. The focus is Trevor Lawrence, and I think Tillman can help you further that MO. Then we get to the Giants. I've noted this a couple times. I think next week's mock, I'm going to go corner round 1, Rashee Rice, which we already did on round 2. And then Ivan Pace is like such a perfect linebacker because he's a great blitzer. He's exactly what Wink Martindale wants, but also Drew Sanders is going to go in the first round and kind of has a lot of those same skill overlap. So a little bit of a different play here. I'm going to go Antonio Mafi, left guard from UCLA. Better run blocker than he is a pass blocker. Now, I know some people are going to see, oh my God, 293. That's just how Mock Draft Database has him ranked. That's, it's going to be different for every person. But a guy who is gaining steam, again, good strength profile, better run blocker than pass protector, but I think there's some pieces in place. And that's like the one spot on the Giants offensive line where I still think they can get better there at left guard. So to me, it makes a lot of sense. Then we get to the Cowboys at pick 90. And hey, I've been lauding for them to move on from Zeke Elliott this offseason because they can finally save a little bit of money. It's only a little bit this offseason, but obviously get them off the books now and huge savings moving forward. So I think in the ideal world, if I'm the Cowboys, cutting Zeke, tagging Pollard, and hoping he comes back healthy, which if they do that, could you pair up Zach Charbonnet and Tony Pollard together? Because, oh my God, talk about like one guy having the power, one guy having the speed, the dash. That would be an awesome tandem. I think Charbonnet's going to run actually okay, probably mid 4.5s. Like, he actually has a decent straight line speed ability. It just takes him a while to get going. He's also one of those guys where like he can have that first cut. Like he plants his foot and can make a cut, but he ain't doing anything after that. Like, he is not Shady McCoy turning a juke into a spin into a stiff arm into another juke. No. You got the one move. You got the one plant of the leg and go. That's Zach Charbonnet. But he is 6'2" and 215 plus pounds. He's a locomotive to bring down. Really good stiff arm too. He has a ton of strength in his profile with enough speed and that one single cut ability. So really fun player. And if you pair him up with Tony Pollard, that can keep the Dallas MO of what they already have while also moving on from Zeke Elliott and that monster of a contract. Next up, Buffalo here at pick 91. Let's go offensive line. I think they can definitely get better here. And also Matt Bergeron, keep him in state. That's cool. But the thing is, like, Deion Dawkins is up and down as a left tackle. I don't think you can do anything about that. You've already given him an extension. He's your left tackle of the future. I think you can get better from Spencer Brown at right tackle. And then when he was banged up and not in the lineup, David Quessenberry, you can absolutely do better than that. So let's bring Bergeron into the mix. Played pretty well at Syracuse. Has the NFL size. His status between different people, and myself included, can kind of vary. I know some people who have him as a top 5 offensive tackle. A little bit lower, like he would be towards the end of my honorable mention, somewhere between OT 8 and 12 probably right now. But I'm anxious to dive back into his tape and see what other people love about him. See if I notice it again once I take another look at it. So interested, could go higher than this, but right here, 3rd round feels like a good value. Let me get to the Bengals at 92. We're going to actually stick it off to the tackle. We're going to go Blake Freeland. So I thought about offensive line in the first round for Cincy. Decided to go Darnell Washington, another pass catcher, but also great blocker. So a guy who took on, Siaki Ika, I keep saying that, Gervon Dexter and BJ Ojolari during the course of the season. So he's got legitimate, awesome pass blocking wins at tight end, which is unheard of. And then also you can wait Blake Freeland, big body guy, could struggle with speed rushers, but just trying to have another guy into the mix. I'm not sure he'll be a starter day one, but if Jonah Williams gets hurt, could certainly fare better than Jackson Carman. Or also think about once you move Carman from guard into tackle, then it's like who's replacing Carman at guard. Or if Lyle Collins gets hurt, you have a contingency over there at right tackle. So I'm thinking of Freeland right away as like a swing tackle that you can kind of develop and maybe with some time can step into a starting spot. In a perfect world, he could be plug and play at left tackle and then Jonah Williams kicks inside to play left guard, but that might be a little bit out of the realm of possibilities. I don't know if Freeland's a guy who strikes me as a day one ready to go starter. Then we get to the Cardinals at 93. Mike Morris, they have him as a D-line, but I think he's an edge rusher with the ability to kick inside. So, if you're playing like that nickel defense or dime, 4-man front in a pass situation, yeah, he could probably play that D tackle over a guard. I can see that. But to me, he's an edge rusher that plays with a bunch of power, 9 sacks this last year at Michigan, and kind of gives you another swing of the bat at Yetur Gross-Matos, which I think, I say there's a ton of these mock drafts, but I think it's worthwhile for the Panthers to take that opportunity because having a power guy opposite of the speed, finesse specialist that is Brian Burns is an awesome pairing, and there's not a whole lot of holes on that Carolina defense. And if you add a second legitimate high-end pass rusher, which no guarantee you're going to get that in the 3rd round, but if Morris works out and even becomes solid right away, plus what you already have with Brian Burns, and that pass rush becomes really, really scary on top of all the other young talent they already have in the mix. All right, next up, the Kansas City Chiefs at 94. We're getting towards the end of it. Let's go with a wide receiver I don't think a lot of people are talking about right now, but a guy who played really well this past week at the Senior Bowl, Mobile. I don't know why that name was blanking on me. And again, don't worry about the number next to his name. Michael Wilson showcased his route running ability to a high level at Mobile this past weekend. And I'm just looking at Juju Smith-Schuster scheduled to be a free agent. And, Kansas City kind of as is doesn't have that possession type on the roster. So I think Michael Wilson could kind of be that 6'2", 205-pound, sharp route runner, do the dirty work, those, 5 to 15 yard, type of routes. That type of work I think could work well for Wilson. And also, he's a guy who put that route running on display at the Senior Bowl, so I want to talk about him here. Certainly a riser coming out of his time at Mobile. But again, Kansas City could be looking for a possession receiver, and I think Wilson can fill that role for that offense. Then we get to the Philadelphia Eagles at 95, and we're actually go back-to-back running backs here. This is a really good running back class. It's just hard sometimes to find where these guys are going to go. Thought about Devin Achane, but these next two picks are not going to be Devin Achane. Let's go Tank Bigsby. Great blend of speed and power, but an awesome one-cut ability. Felt like he had better footwork this year. It felt like the first couple of years at Auburn, he was always tripping up over himself when he finally got going. Didn't see that a whole lot this year at Auburn. And also, he was kind of the guy trying to carry the Auburn offense. So I think, especially in a place like Philadelphia, where it's like, hey, young man, just like do your role. We got Jalen Hurts. We got A.J. Brown. We got Devonta Smith. We got Quez Watkins. We got Dallas Goedert. We got dudes. Like, you just do your thing, read the blocks, and pick up what you can pick up. Kind of like Jahmyr Gibbs. At Georgia Tech, he was trying to play superhero. He was trying to be Superman, really, of that offense. Goes to Alabama, and it's like, hey, I'm just a cog in the mix here. This is a great supporting cast, and he got better because of it. I can see the same thing happening for Tank Bigsby, where it's like college production wasn't anything insane, but it's because he was trying to be Superman. Now here in Philadelphia, he can just kind of be himself. And then Roschon Johnson is really interesting here for the Cardinals. I'm going to go Sean Tucker. Another one of those guys with an awesome blend of speed and power. Didn't take a huge step forward this past year at Syracuse, but again, I think that's kind of a product of Syracuse, unfortunately, not being that great of an offense. So Sean Tucker had to do a whole lot of work there. But man, you add him into Arizona and what we've already done across the offensive line, could be a really, really fun place for him to go. And I do believe James Conner's under contract for one more year, so you don't even have to rush him into an immediate starting role. Just kind of work him into the committee. Next up, Washington Commanders at pick 97. We're going to go interior offensive line here, Emil Ekiyor. He has his fans. I'm a little bit lower on him. He wasn't necessarily the most impressive Alabama offensive lineman. Like you see Alabama O-lineman in the third round, it's like, all right, well, that dude's about to be a stud. Nah, not really, but a little bit lower of a baseline than I think some of the previous O-linemen coming out of the Crimson Tide program has been. But nonetheless, a guy who played a ton of football for the Crimson Tide, and I do feel like is an upgrade over Andrew Norwell, who was on a one-year deal. So they're looking for a replacement there as is. Get a guy who has good strength in his profile, solid size, played under Nick Saban, which feels like a lot of NFL teams covet that. And then a guy who's cheaper at the position as well, 4 years worth of control. So it makes a lot of sense. We've gone, tight end, corner, IOL. I think those three position groups make a ton of sense. A couple other places you can go for Washington, maybe another linebacker in the mix, defensive line if you lose out on Daron Payne, something like that. Then we get to the Cleveland Browns, and as promised in yesterday's video, we are going to address wide receiver here because I really wanted to go wide receiver at 42, but I couldn't. So instead, we're going to go Marvin Mims, 5'11", right around 185 pounds, memory serves, maybe 190, but plays with an abundance of speed. Unfortunately, his first year at Oklahoma was his best, but also once you lose Lincoln Riley and you have a change in system and play calling in specific, it's fair to expect a wide receiver to have that little bit of a dip in production. So I'm still buying into his speed and what he could add into this Cleveland offense. Because you have Mitchell Schwartz, who has speed, but he's a specialist. He's like a gadget end-around, yak, bubble screen type of guy. I think Marvin Mims has legitimate route tree capabilities with that speed. So you play him in the slot, and then you have Amari Cooper on the outside as the do-it-all guy, and then Donovan Peoples-Jones is the vertical, kind of the poor man's Gabe Davis, working that vertical tree, good speed, good size. Marvin Mims kind of rounds it out and gives you that last piece I think you're missing. Next up, we have San Francisco picking 3 times for the next 4. So if you're a San Francisco fan watching this video, give yourself a round of applause. Honestly, if you are, comment down below. I might have to give you something because I appreciate you watching this video all the way to the end. That or you did a hell of a job clicking through. But San Francisco, this is your part here. Let's go Byron Young. This is the Byron Young from Alabama. No guarantee you get Charles Menahue back. And I think that role that Omenihu played this year. He really impressed me when I got to see him play, and I think Byron Young can do a lot of the same things. And plus, San Francisco keeps that priority on the defensive line at a high level, so I think this makes a lot of sense. Then we get to the Giants before we round it out with 2 more picks from the 49ers. Here at pick 100, I'm going to go with Riley Moss, kind of like what I talked about with Mekhi Garner. Good size. Moss is 6'1", right around that 200-pound mark, actually. So, actually played pretty well at Iowa, but, not like insane strength of schedule against, right? Like, not a whole lot of wide receivers he went up against where it's like, all right, now this is a good test for Moss. So, here in the 3rd round, this is just me trying to add a big corner to a defense that's looking for man press types. Moss could certainly fit that. No guarantee that it hits, but hey, it's the 3rd round. We're looking for players that could potentially be a nice addition to that defense and fit that role. And I think Riley Moss is kind of that Wink Martindale-esque corner, and hopefully it works out because then him and Adoree Jackson gives you a really nice boundary duo. We round things out talking about San Francisco. We'll see. Travis Gibson played pretty well for them this year. Tashaun Gibson played pretty well for them, but as an in-season signing, I could see them wanting to go elsewhere or younger and cheaper at the position. So Brandon Joseph, I think, makes a lot of sense. I think he's a good, really strong, true free safety. Good ball hawk, solid speed. He cleaned up his tackling a ton this year at Notre Dame, which was his big knock when he was at Northwestern. So that's huge for his stock. And then to round things out, let's go with a guy who's playing in California as is, and Kai Blue Kelly. Obviously, his dad played cornerback in the NFL too, so it makes a ton of sense. And actually, he got cooked up by Michael Wilson that first day at the Senior Bowl, but otherwise had a pretty good showing down in Mobile. So I think he's a guy that's, after that first day, things got a lot better, and he boosted his stock on day 2 and 3 of the Senior Bowl. So excited to see what that does for his draft status, but I think it's the very last pick in the 3rd round. That's damn good value for San Francisco. When you're trotting out, 3rd and 4th and 5th corners from your preseason roster, adding a little bit more depth never goes wrong. So for San Francisco, you get some defensive line help, you get a safety, and you add a corner. Feels like a really nice addition. But that's going to do it for round 3, the first time we've gotten to talk about the 3rd round here on my channel. So hopefully you guys enjoyed it. I'm going ahead and scrolling through the entire draft, giving you a quick refresher because hopefully you're giving your thoughts down below in the comment section. Who's your favorite team? What picks do you like? Which ones do you not like? What would you change? And if you're indifferent about it all, I'd love to hear your opinion all the same. Again, as long as you're not an asshole, I respond to just about every comment. So I am eager to hear your comments down below in the comments section. But hopefully you guys enjoyed this 3-round mock. 3-round mocks are going to be the norm moving forward, and I'm excited about it. So if you're excited about that, be sure to hit that like button. And if you're new around here, want to see more 3-round mocks, more draft coverage, more football in your life in general, hit that big red subscribe button. But that is going to do it for me. Hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day. And until next time, my name is Teach, and I'm signing off.